Welcome back. You're watching Gravitas. Before we shift our focus to Pakistan's celebration of the fall of Dhaka, let's get back to Mr. Shantanu Mukherjee, who joins us on the discussion from New Delhi. Mr. Mukherjee, if you could just sum up for us what you feel is the state of the Bangladesh nation as it stands in the 21st century today, 45 years after its independence.
Well, I would like to say I heard my co-speakers from Bangladesh, and it was more of history, what had happened in the past. What we should look now is how Bangladesh is shaping now. Now, politically, definitely we have a polity under a very able leadership who is not only pro-India, but very secular, and has got all the genuine desires to bring secularism on the rails. And of course, there are impediments. There are Jamaat-e-Islami elements who are trying to derail it. And definitely, in every country, they have these elements. So what is more important, other than the political will, is the state authorities and the law and order machinery to quell them. We saw wonderfully on the 1st of July, the bakery attack, and how soon and how effectively they stormed in. Soon after that, there was an Eid congregation on the 7th, and the police again neutralized the attacks. That shows that there is hope and there is willingness of the government to counter it. It is really slightly exaggeration to say by my other fellow speakers that when they see the foreigners, then they act, and when they don't see foreigners, it's not really true. I don't think it's true. And they act in any way. But they have their limitations. They may not be as professional, intelligence-wise or counter-terror apparatus-wise as, say, other Western countries. It takes time. So the world, the global intelligence and counter-terror community needs to hold hand of Bangladesh. I also heard about ISI's role in 1971 and in the aftermath of that. Let us not forget that ISI is still active. If you take as statistical figures from 2015 onwards, there had been a number of deportation of cases of Pakistan High Commission officials working as undercover ISI agents in Dhaka. They were indulged in all kinds of activities that is not compatible to diplomatic status.
Right,
that
Mr.
shows
Mukherjee, you are bringing up the ISI. I am going to use that as a segue into discussing that liberation of Bangladesh from the Pakistan side of things. Let's look at the 1971 war from that angle. Has Pakistan learned anything from its breakup in 1971 as the country commemorates, I misspoke earlier by saying celebrates, the country commemorates what it calls the fall of Dhaka today. WION's Pakistan Bureau Chief Taha Siddiqui reports on how the narrative around 16th December is controlled by the state.
Pakistan is commemorating the 45th anniversary of its breakup, when the eastern part of the country, which is now known as Bangladesh, gained independence. It is referred to as the fall of Dhaka, and the blame is entirely put on India and the ethnic population of that region for conspiring against West Pakistan, as it was known before 1971. But historians refute this, saying that it was Western Pakistani rulers, especially the military, that was running the affairs of the country at that time, the ones who discriminated against the Bengalis on racial grounds, which led to cracks that ended up dividing the country. East Pakistan wanted to have linguistic recognition, better share of resources, and more autonomy in managing their area. But instead of addressing these concerns, General Ayub Khan and then later General Yahya Khan chose to clamp down on all such dissent. The army started a military operation in 1971, arresting Bengali leadership, and is accused of killing thousands of their own population before India intervened, as it saw gross human rights violations and an inflow of refugees into its territory, given that it shared a border with East Pakistan. 90,000 soldiers were captured by the Indian forces, all of whom were later handed back to Pakistan.
Despite a passage of 45 years, Pakistan continues to blame neighboring India for creation of Bangladesh. Observers say this narrative helps the state lie to its public about what really happened. And if those mistakes are not identified and rectified, we may see a repeat of 1971 in other conflict-ridden zones of Pakistan, where locals complain of similar marginalization that East Pakistani population complained of back then. This is Taha Siddiqui with cameraman Rao Bilal reporting for WION from Islamabad.
In fact, Taha Siddiqui, WION's bureau chief in Pakistan, is on the phone line with us right now. Taha, is it correct for us to say that Pakistan has moved on from the 1971, or do you feel that that war still does rankle somewhere in the country?
Well, it is sort of discussed in public forums, but the way the subject is approached is different. I mean, today there were multiple news organizations, channels. They held debates about it, discussions about it. But mostly the debate is kind of, as we were mentioning in the package also, in the report also, that the debate is about assigning blame on external factors rather than internal factors. Many of the articles that have been written, op-ed pieces in newspapers today that I read, most of them talk about sort of the 1971 fall of Dhaka, as they call it here, as something that was conspired by India and conspired by the Bengalis themselves. So there's no internal debate, but definitely, I mean, in that sense that moving on, as you were asking, moving on, they haven't really moved on from the issue itself.
All right, Taha, let's speak with Mr. Chaudhry. When it comes to Bangladesh, Mr. Chaudhry, only recently were the executions of 2 people for the 1971 war crimes carried out. Would you agree that the country is still to have complete closure when it comes to the liberation?
Well, closure happens in many ways. If you look at the War Crimes Tribunal, these were members of Jamaat Islami and few Muslim League leaders. A lot of people were actually those who had collaborated or tortured or committed genocide in 71 were dealt by the villagers themselves. There were a lot of people who were criminals were killed. And it's a complex history. The simplification problem is about blaming. Just like Pakistan cannot deal with 1971 largely because it's a narrative of Pakistani army's complete lack of understanding what was going on. I was doing a television program on killing of intellectuals. I mean, the languages were being reported by the members of the family. The hatred is there. But I think much more was the stupidity, the idea that if you killed a few people, maybe a few hundred people on 25th March, you would actually end the national movement. I think that is why Pakistan cannot deal with 1971, because you would end up thinking you have an army which is less intellectually advanced than you are used to thinking. In Bangladesh, the problem is how do you figure out this issue of who was to blame, because there were not a single case of genocide in Bangladesh after the month of April where some Bangladeshi were not involved or not for personal gain. To the army and say, this is full of people who got lots of money, you can come and loot these people. So both countries have a problem in dealing with 71. It's easier to hang a few people because you have a case against them, but not with the fact that there's so many behind every genocide, a Bangladeshi could actually be identified.
Okay, Mr. Mukherjee, closing thoughts then from you on this tenuous sort of understanding or closure, really speaking, when it comes to the 71 war, not just in Bangladesh, but how Pakistan looks at 16th December as well.
Well, Pakistan knows that it was a huge blunder and the decisions went wrong by the military leadership. And we saw 90,000 plus surrendering so meekly to the Indian forces, and all their jingoism and misadventures were deflated within a minute under the might of the Indian military and the Bangladesh Mukti Jodhas, also the freedom fighters. We should not forget about that. So Pakistan, whether it is learning from history, is a question of doubt now, because the problem is that nobody learns from the history. and the internal simmerings, this is slightly will not be germane, what is happening in Pakistan, if they take a leaf out of the book of Bangladesh, they should be better concerned so that Bangladesh is not repeated. That is the best lesson that Pakistan can imbibe now. And of course, all those military officers at the helm now, most of them are commissioned post 1971. So we expect that they have got an open and fertile mind and give a fresh look to introspect what went wrong and to take correct measures so that this thing is not repeated in Pakistan once again.
All right, Mr. Shantanu Mukherjee, thanks for joining us on the program here on WION tonight. We appreciate you taking out the time. It's interesting that our guests are talking about hope and how Pakistan, or perhaps Bangladesh, I should say, has not a very dark future ahead of it. In fact, there is hope that things will go right. In fact, on that note, let's take a look at a very interesting story that Pakistan's Next Gen has when it comes to reflecting on the 1971 war. You may be surprised by what they have to say. Take a look.
I'm standing here at Quaid-e-Azam University with a few students from international relations and political science to discuss fall of Dhaka on December 16th. My first question to you, Afaq, is what do you know about fall of Dhaka or December 16th from your personal experience, from your knowledge, and from what you've studied?
Assalamu alaikum. First of all, if we throw a glance on the history of Pakistan in 1947, so during the partition there was a lot of problems. If we look at the geographical location, so there is no geographical contiguity between Bangladesh and Pakistan due to India, because India was lying between India and Bangladesh. Important thing was that there was a conspiracy of India at that times, which further instigated the division of Bangladesh and Pakistan.
Another question, Rabia, that I would like to ask you is about the fact that the relationship right now that Pakistan and Bangladesh enjoy. Bangladesh has recently started hanging people who were involved in what they call the genocide back in the day. Do you think that Pakistan and Bangladesh have a good relationship, or should they have a good relationship? What should be the future way?
Recently, the relationship between both the countries is not good, and it cannot be good as far as I think, because like Bangladesh got independence from Pakistan, so it is like it suffered by the hands of Pakistani rulers, or whatever you call it.
Do you think there is in normal narratives, in Pakistani narratives that you hear on TV, like for example now December 16th will be, everybody will talk about fall of Dhaka. Do you think that all of what we've discussed today here, does this discussion come on the mainstream?
Yes, people should know about it, that what were the basic problems, what were the basic factors which led Bengalis to be separated from Pakistan, so that they should know about the basic dilemma, what was at that time.
From the start, if we said from the start, we are not having open debate. If anyone having open debate, then it will make an issue for him. I will say that from primary to our government school, we must give right truth theory to the child and students, that they must know what was really happened. I have seen in many books that 1971 war was won by Pakistan, but when I came here and see another theory in a form of books.
Another thing that this is the final question that I would like to ask you, Afaq, is the fact that we've seen that there has not been any internal review of Bangladesh, and we see nowadays that on the same principles of linguistics or the same principle of economic deprivation, Balochistan, some people say, is going on the same lines. Do you think that there has been any internal review of what happened in Bangladesh and what we did wrong as Pakistani, and have we learned from our mistakes?
Yes, of course, because it was a great lesson, because it was a great debacle in 1971 in which half of our state was separated from.
Okay, so some interesting perspectives being brought to us by Taha Siddiqui there. Let's go back to Mr. Chaudhry, who joins us from Dhaka. Mr. Chaudhry, the youth comprises a large segment of Bangladesh as well. In fact, UNICEF says that 79% of men and 83% of women between 15 and 24 in Bangladesh are for secularism. You heard the comments there from Pakistan as well. Does this augur a bright future for Bangladesh and, of course, the relationship between perhaps the two countries as well?
Bangladesh's social development sector is doing very well. And if you look at even at one meta indicator, life expectancy, it's actually much more than India even. So it shows that there is much more cohesive. It's possible. Bangladesh has a huge non-government organizational service provider network. So these things are positives. And I think its health sector is doing very well. Its economic sector has started to do very well. Extreme poverty has been halved. It's a global model. So there are many positives going on for Bangladesh. Bangladesh's major problem right now is it needs much more investment because it needs to create jobs. And for that, it's looking for billions of dollars. Now, the situation is this billions of dollars will come, is already coming, largely from one particular country, China. So the future is that Bangladesh is becoming closer to China in terms of this economics. And how Bangladesh, I don't think it can play a very major role in deciding the terms of relationship, but it certainly can expect people to be more interested. But pockets of poverty will remain, pockets of bad health will remain, and those are the concerns. So the marginalized groups may continue to suffer, but the middle hopefully will get better. And Bangladesh's major problem is the upper class is extremely wealthy, and the difference between the upper and the lower is too high. The MP income is 100 times more than that of an average person's income. Those are the concerns we are not flagging, and those are the things we are crossing over. That's what I think.
Okay, Saad, let's get your closing thoughts as well. It seems, as Mr. Chaudhary, pardon me, is pointing out, that the public domain or the narrative that we see in the media, keeps bringing back the idea of radical Islam in Bangladesh. But when you dig deeper, it seems that it's economy and its economic poverty that really has led to a great divide between the poor and rich in Bangladesh. Is that one of the main reasons that you feel perhaps is holding Bangladesh back from achieving its true potential?
Asha, I've thoroughly enjoyed the panelists and what they have spoken in this show, particularly now. But having said that, when Mr. Chaudhary pointed out in the early stage, and he has mentioned it even later, that the debate or the narrative that we have here, besides the economic disparity like you have asked for, which is clearly there and it is holding back, what needs to be noted is the fact that the debates essentially lie in the political spectrum. And when I mentioned about the constitution in the beginning, that is a contradiction that the country has. And also, when Mr. Chaudhary mentioned about the number game in terms of how many people were killed in 71, as much as that is less of a concern more than what has happened, Bangladesh continues to face the intolerance towards its religious and national minorities. And even though a lot of these cases, when we dig deep, we see that the number of casualties are not as much. In some cases, there aren't any. But then again, you see that there is a scaremongering going on for these national minorities and religious minorities. When we look at the national minorities, Bangladesh's 10% of the land goes to these national minorities in the Chittagong Hill Tracts, where there are a lot of Bengali settlers there. Now, that's one component. And then we look at the religious minorities where Hindus, Buddhists, and Christians are attacked in different times. And in all these cases, irrespective of the casualties, we see this scaremongering going on. And who are carrying this out is not properly investigated. And when these investigations are not given enough importance, like Mr. Chaudhary also pointed out in case of the bloggers, they are getting an impunity. And in such cases, there is always that rise of radicalization, or at least an indulgence being given to.
Okay, let's go to Pakistan now, to our bureau chief there, Taha Siddiqui, who is also with us on the program. Taha, as we're looking at right now, Saad is saying that sometimes these people in Bangladesh operate with impunity. Do instances of intolerance that take place in Bangladesh capture the attention of Pakistan, especially when a day such as the fall of Dhaka Day is commemorated? Is that as far as the limitation goes when it comes to Pakistan's engagement with what's happening in Bangladesh?
Well, actually, in Pakistan, the debate about with regards to the 71 and sort of like, you know, when it talks about it with respect to what Bangladesh is doing right now, there's a lot of talk about actually about the hangings and the recent trials of Jamaat Islami, because Jamaat Islami is largely present in Pakistan itself. It has a government, it shares a government in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa with PTI. And so it has a lot of street power also at the same time. So Jamaat Islami has held rallies and protests about what is going on in Bangladesh with regards to these trials, and even to the extent that right now, like the government in power of Nawaz Sharif, his interior minister in the parliament also talked about this issue, and the Foreign Office also condemned this issue. So there's this from Pakistan, the narrative is about how whatever happened in 1971, let's look past what Pakistan's role was in it and why Pakistan had to do it, and for that reason, bringing the trials back and the execution happening or the hanging happening in Bangladesh.
Right.
In Pakistan, looked down upon, and they think that it's going back to the past when we should not.
Okay, Taha, thanks for joining in with your details and those two great stories also for our discussion. They really enriched our conversation here on the show. I'm being told that we do have time to continue the conversation, so I would like to go across to Mr. Chaudhary and sort of circle back to what we started the whole conversation about, and that is really what you've brought up repeatedly is you know, the utilization of certain factors by political parties for political gain, which may have caused you know, outside media to see radicalism as a growing threat in Bangladesh. But have secular aspirations, in your opinion, in that country been held back by power struggles, let's say when it comes to things like land and status, and maybe they've been quote unquote misused by political parties for their own gain?
Of course, all the time. And political parties will use anything they get to stick to power or to come to power. If you look at the history of 71, and I have documented 3 districts in some details, and you'll find in every case it was a question of grabbing property from Hindus, and then later on grabbing property from whoever had property. So property grabbing is our national activity, because if there is weak law and order situation, this will increase tremendously, and that is a major problem. Nobody ever denies that Bangladesh has a major law and order situation. We do not have rule of law. It takes years and years for a case to come forward. If you're powerful, you can get away with it, and there have been many people who have gotten away with it. This has allowed people to understand that, well, we can use this delay in the process and carry out these acts. But in particular cases where the Hindus have been attacked, where the bloggers have been attacked, and such people, and later on they were found after the attack, till the attack on the Holy Artisan Bakery where foreigners were killed, people were not acting. I am an activist. We were shouting for action. The action began after the attack, and when the police acted, they acted marvelously. In 2 months they have been wiped out. And since the attack, we have had no single attack. I think, sure. I don't know how many killed, how many of these militants have been killed. So I think the police needs to get that political will going, that ordinary people also needs to be protected, and not just the important people. And that, I think, is a very major point. Okay,
I'm being told that Mr. Shantanu Mukherjee is also still with us on the program, and very glad for that. Mr. Mukherjee, as Mr. Chaudhary is pointing out, the foreigner angle was very apparent in the Dhaka attack from July this year. But another thing that did come up was the fact that most of these attackers claiming allegiance to the Islamic State were also from fairly affluent and educated backgrounds. Is that one of the big flags that was then raised in Bangladesh, and not really the foreigner factor, that has caused the ruling dispensation to take stern action when it comes to the spread of radicalism in Bangladesh?
Well, the foreigners' angle, why I am contesting that, it's not necessarily that because the foreigners were kept hostages, the government acted. 6 days after that, at the Eid congregation, I think it was Kishorganj near Maimansingh, and there were no foreigners. They were all Bangladeshi brethren. They had congregated to observe Eid, and there was indiscriminate firing. And the police took no time to diffuse that crisis and neutralize the perpetrators. So which shows that it is not necessarily the foreigners' angle. And of course, the foreigners' angle, it is no pressure from the foreigners. Any hostage taken, a Japanese or anything, anywhere, so there's hue and cry. And it is dependent on aids and all, it is there. But it should not be at the cost of the local Bangladeshis, that their lives are sacrificed at the cost of the foreigners. This is not the case to be in case of Bangladesh. This is one. Number two, as far as the radicals, they were all from the sophisticated families. Yes, this is a social malaise. This is a malady which is going on everywhere, and Bangladesh is no exception. I'm not trying to justify what happened in Bangladesh. There was a huge gap between the affluent parents and the students who were being educated in convent and very modern schools. There was no communication between the children and the parents, and that holds good for every country.
Right.
There was a huge gap, and they are into the age of romanticization. There's huge IS publicity that you join, and this is jihad, the doctrination programs, and it is but natural for everybody to be drawn towards that. History is witness to it, whether it is French Revolution or anywhere.
Right.
Anything romantic, they get attracted to. So similarly, Bangladeshi youth got attracted to it. So what is needed here, the prescription is that the government, the society, the NGOs, the parents, they all must come together and have a closer look on their children. What are they doing? And the teachers too have a role to play in the school, whether there are notable absentees, where have they gone? If they are accounted for, if they are reined in, then certainly it will minimize, if not totally nullify, the radicalization of the youth there, and things would be reasonably under control. That's just my view.
All right, Mr. Mukherjee. I guess it's safe to assume that we're all on the same page when it comes to understanding that Bangladesh does have a hopeful future ahead of it, but part of its story of growth and development will also hinge on religious tolerance, as has become painfully apparent since those attacks this year, not just on the Holy Artisan Cafe, but on bloggers and intellectuals who hold perhaps a different view than that of what is purported to be that of the majority. I'm going to have to wrap up the show on that note. Let me say my thanks to all our guests first, but Mr. Shantanu Mukherjee, thanks for joining us, as well as Mr. Afsan Chaudhry and Saad Hamadi, who joined us from Dhaka, and of course WION's Pakistan Bureau Chief Taha Siddiqui for joining us from Pakistan. I'm Aisha Sindhu. I'm saying good night now here on Gravitas. Join us for more news and updates on the other side of this short break. We'll see you then.